Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Kaye Elliott and I'm Director of High-End Television at ScreenSkills. And it's brilliant to have you all here today for today's session. I'll just give you a very quick overview of who ScreenSkills is. I'm sure most of you know, but we are the UK skills body. We're here to support the growth on and development of the freelance workforce across film and television. We do that across the whole of the UK. Do check out the website. We're there to support freelancers in a number of ways, including obviously this series of sessions that we're delivering through the website. I also want to name check the High-End TV Skills Fund, which is enabling us to deliver today's session. And of course, introduce you to our fantastic leads, session leads. We have Neville Kidd, who is Emmy Award-winning director of photographer, and some of his highlight shows include Sherlock, Outlander and Doctor Who. We also have BAFTA-nominated Marcus Wilson, and his credits as producer and exec producer include The A Word, which is on our screens at the moment, Life on Mars, Luther and Doctor Who. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Neville and Marcus, and then we'll take some questions at the end. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Kaye, and thank you everybody for coming down. It's great to be able to talk to Neville and kind of discuss, what we've done together on various shows. But I think let's, to dive straight in. Hopefully everybody on the chat should have an idea of what a cinematographer does. But I'd be really interested, Neville, to hear how you would describe the role of a cinematographer on a show.
Yep. Hi everyone. An honour to be here, and hope everyone's safe in lockdown. I think the main role of a cinematographer is to kind of realise and visually realise the storytelling on budget, with a creative flair, with the director, with the showrunners, with the producers, and collaborate with all the departments to kind of make a complete program.
Cool. So basically, you've got a foot in every camp.
Yeah, you've got a foot in every camp, and I think that's one of the things you learn as you're going up the ladder. I think when you're making the low budget dramas, you're very much it's a kind of relationship with you and the director, maybe the producer. And then as you start to the projects get bigger, you realize the collaboration is vast. It's all departments. And you need to have, exactly as Marcus says, a foot in every camp, so that all you're trying to do is limit your variables. Because on a film set, everything goes wrong, and you're just trying to limit the amount of things that go wrong. So if you're in control of them, then you make your day. And that's another thing, is you're spending a huge amount of money, and you've got to complete your day. If you're always chasing your tail, you're always behind, you're failing as your job.
Yeah, I mean, as a producer, you're always trying to square the triangle of, good, fast and cheap.
Yeah.
And the DoP always seems to bear the brunt of that conversation.
And I think you make those gambles, you make those decisions, you look at locations, thinking, can I control everything? What amount of light do I have to bring in to control it? How much is that going to cost? What happens if it falls through? I think you've got to have plan Bs in action, because again, things don't turn up, the weather changes, or a location is not available anymore. So I think you're constantly thinking of plan Bs, thinking of how you can cover yourself.
So basically, you're always on. I mean, I think the DoP role is one of the key crew roles. Effectively one of the leaders of the team. But it's a role that requires a lot of experience to get there. What was your route into the role? How did you start in the industry and work your way up?
Yeah, in Scotland, it's a bit more of a kind of cottage industry. So the DPs up here, we tend to have a foot in every camp. We'll do documentaries, we'll do commercials, we'll do dramas, we'll do corporates, because there's not enough work up here to just specialise. So I spent my way working up through documentaries. I did BBC News, and it was a great kind of learning process of, you can't make mistakes. You've got to be able to work in a small team. You've got to be able to collaborate. You've got to be a good human. You've got to be able to listen to people, and you're problem solving all the time. And I thought it was a great learning curve. And for me, I always wanted to move into drama. So I was kind of keeping my drama jobs, working my way up to try and get in. And it was you, Marcus, that gave me one of my big breaks. I did a low budget film called Solid Hair, which I'd shown you.
Which was beautiful, yeah. Yeah.
And I did Lip Service. It was one of my first sort of TV jobs for BBC. and then you give me the break to get onto Taggart and then onto Doctor Who.
Yeah, and then I've been able to get hold of you since. Yeah, but no, I think the documentary background was one of the things that attracted me to your CV, because in a fast-paced and, as you say, quite expensive world of drama, having a DP who's got a documentary background means that they're used to rolling with the changes and concentrating on grabbing that performance that may only come once. So I think for people who've got some documentary experience, that's always attractive when you're looking at a CV.
Yeah, and it's an invaluable experience being able to operate yourself as well. I think when you're starting off as a DP, you need to be able to operate. And then when you move on to the bigger American shows, you're not allowed to operate anymore, and you're more in charge of your camera team. But I think being able to operate, to be able to understand and show people what exactly you want, is invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the show the first show we did together, Taggart, was a kind of staple ITV drama. But from watching Solidaire, which I think you shot on Digibeta,
yeah,
I knew that you could elevate the material, and that the technology was and the budget was kind of secondary to how you approach stuff. I think you use locations and the light, natural or otherwise, beautifully. It'd be interesting to talk about how much budget affects you. Is it one of the first things you think of, or do you think of the creative first and then the budget is either a benefit or a constraint on things?
It does vary enormously. I think it's number one is the scripts, and if the script is good, then you're attached and interested in the projects. And if you're doing a science fiction, then you realize the budget has to be big in order to realize your ambition. If you're doing something more contemporary, then the budget doesn't have to be as big. So I think you kind of go with the subject matter. And if the script is good, you would jump on it, and I don't think it matters what the budget is, because at the end of the day, a good script jumps out, and you can be on the biggest show in the world with the worst script and nobody's going to watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the second thing we did together, we did a couple of episodes of Doctor Who with Nick Harron directing, and then we asked Nick to direct the Doctor Who anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor, 50th anniversary. And Nick's first request when we offered him the job was, can I have Neville? And the two of you dived into that project, which was the biggest episode of Doctor Who we'd ever made. It was also designed to be shown in cinemas and also in 3D. So given that you're looking at a piece of work which was going to be simulcast around the world and potentially seen by tens of millions, what were your kind of first thoughts with taking on that kind of show? Where did you start thinking about that show?
Well, I couldn't believe I was doing it, being a big Doctor Who fan, and also being on 3D was fantastic because we had to learn 3D. So Nick and I remember you sent us on a 3D course, which we started shooting some test stuff, and that was a phenomenal journey to learn not only how 3D works, but how to then make 3D work, to its best of ability. What the restrictions of 3D are, because one of the big things is the weight of the cameras. I remember our operator Joe Russell doing a handheld sequence, and I picked it up to see how heavy it was. And I think I started crying in about 3 seconds, and Joe would throw this thing around, and I don't know how he did it.
No, Joe's an amazing operator. I mean, how did you balance a show that was simultaneously going to be seen on people's iPads and TVs at home with, at the Odeon at Leicester Square?
I think Nick and myself just wanted to make it as cinematic and big as possible. And because it was, the 50th anniversary, it had to be big, it had to be different. And we pushed it all the way.
And how, in terms of making it feel as big and different as possible, how did there's the production design, there's the visual effects, how, particularly through the cinematography, did you approach that? What could you bring to it in terms of cinematography?
We went very big on the big lighting setups. As Nick Curran always said, be bold. Never back down from sort of your most ambitious ideas. We just went for, I think every shot had to pop out the screen. Every shot had to be your best ever shot. And that's what I always say to the crew, is every shot you've got to be proud of, and everyone has to be a still in its own right. And I think if you maintain that, you get a momentum and a quality that everybody, it's like the project becomes everybody's own baby, and it becomes part of the family. And then everybody's proud, and you make something that's going to be special and different.
Yeah, I think that ownership really showed. I mean, given the budget we had, the show that was made looked amazing. Were there any particular challenges that came up during the making of it? Any days where you looked at and go, how am I going to get through this day?
I think every day. But no, I think the biggest challenge for us was when we had to change lenses, because I think that's what took the longest amount of time. Being in 3D, when you're doing a normal shoot, you change lenses in a matter of minutes. And if you're on a 3D rig, you change lenses and it takes 15, 20 minutes. And we had one rig that was automatic that would reassess all the alignments, with one that was manual. And we soon realized if the manual change, it took about half an hour. So you had to then change the way you were blocking your scenes to minimize lens changes. Well, which actually worked in our favor, actually, in a way, because it made the show bigger.
Yeah.
Because I think we stayed on wider lenses more often rather than changing into a tighter lens. We moved the camera into that position. So it almost
the
made it
necessity actually helped the...
Yeah, I think so. And I think sometimes, yeah.
I'm just talking about lenses. How do you approach choice of lenses, and
again,
in terms of both the type and the actual, the focal lengths during the shoot?
Kind of story led, of what suits the story. Whether you want to be anamorphic, whether you want the spherical lenses to have a vintage feel, whether you want the lenses to have no feel. You don't want any interference to come from the visual side, because you don't want any distraction. Because sometimes the visual distractions can be too much and you're not watching the story anymore. And I think you've got responsibility as a cinematographer to tell the story. And if you start to become too obsessed by your job and you start to show, it's almost like if you start to show off too much, people start to not connect with the story. Because what my job is what I was saying at the beginning, I've got to lure people in and give the vision of the director, and put it on screen. And I think you've got to do that depending on the script. You've got to do it subtly. You can, if it's something like Sherlock was fantastic because you could show off a little bit more, because Sherlock was always showing off. In the same way that Doctor Who it had its house style. And if you suddenly came along and said, okay, I'm not going to do the Doctor Who style, I'm going to make X, Y, and Z, it's going to jump out and everybody's going to go, whoa, wait a sec. And Doctor Who had a kind of moving camera and a kind of excitement that just was its house style. And you could agree, you would add your own little kind of custom styles to it. And the same with Sherlock. You can push it. But if you're doing something more contemporary, maybe, like your A word, if the camera's too clever and too tricksy, people are not connecting anymore.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It's a bit something in an age where the technology is getting cleverer and cleverer, and we keep having to remind ourselves that the story is what matters. Yeah, because you want to play with the new toys. As a DP, obviously the director DP relationship is key. And do you find that the same directors bring you back for projects time and again?
Yeah, and I think it's a great relationship. And I thank you for bringing Nick Curran and myself together. I feel
like I should be getting a commission for that.
Yeah. You just kind of click, and Nick, we did Doctor Who, we did Sherlock, we went on to do Travellers for Netflix and Altered Carbon and Netflix. And you have a kind of second hand, and Nick develops, I knew what he was thinking. And we would discuss in great detail what the story was, what the visual style was. And then you start bringing in the other departments. Then you start speaking to, you realize you've got to collaborate with the costume, make sure that if you light a room a certain way and suddenly somebody comes in with a bright yellow overcoat, it's going to suddenly change the lighting in the whole room. So I think...
How do you share your ideas with them to make sure that doesn't happen? What's the kind of Do you show them film references? Do you show them photos? You know, what's the best way of communicating?
We'll do like a pitch document that we give to the studio of how the product's going to look, and it comes from all the departments. It comes from costume, comes from makeup. The director and I will spend a lot of time with costume, going through all the we call them mood boards of all the characters. We'll then put a presentation forward to the studio, and sometimes the studio will say, "Do you know what? I don't like that look. Let's change that character. I don't want him to look like the 1960s. Let's change him to the 50s or whatever."
Yeah.
And early on, these things are caught, because you don't want to be standing on a film set and everybody's debating the color of the coats. And the same with makeup. You do the same. You get everybody's hair and makeup tests done early, so nobody's on set going, "I don't like their hair."
Yeah, much cheaper to fix it in prep than in rushes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of those relationships, what do you think are your key relationships? Production designer, costume designer? How do you interact with actors?
Yeah, going back to your production line, when you come in on a big show like Altered Carbon or Umbrella Academy, you're world building. So, I'll come in, in Altered Carbon, we started 6 months before we started filming, because we were building everything from scratch. In Umbrella Academy, it was 4 months. So you're starting the job with the production designer, with the showrunner, with the producers, with the director. And you're all sitting around the table and you're all looking at a blank piece of paper. And then the production designer starts to draw everything. And then I'll say, "Can I have a window here? Can I have a corridor here?" And then you start to build the world, and it's a complete kind of collaboration, because you can't come in on the day before you start filming and go, "Oh, can I have a window in that wall, please?"
Yeah.
And one of the big things of Umbrella Academy was I wanted to integrate lighting into the sets, so the sets could be 360. So that has to happen months in advance.
I mean, that sounds like a great prep process. How do you cope when you're doing the opposite, when you're slotting into a show that's already up and running, when you're kind of a guest DP in a way?
Yeah, when I was doing Outlander, you would basically jump in and you become part of the family, and you've got to collaborate. And then the gaffers, they've been working with the DPs before you. They've set up the style, and they can help you. They can say, "This is the kind of style we're doing," and it's important to go along with it, and it's important to talk with the other DPs. And that's what's changing in the industry, I'd say, in the last 5-10 years. We're now alternating DPs. Before, it'd be one DP does a show, whereas now there's 2 DPs doing a show, sometimes 3 DPs doing a show. And it's fantastic for us, because we're used to being on our own and suffering and feeling the world, the world is against us. So now you've got like a best friend on set.
Yeah.
And, even though you're not on set together, you sometimes share an office.
Yeah.
And you can kind of work together.
There's no professional rivalry between DPs.
Yeah, I think that's, when you're younger, there's definitely a professional rivalry, but when you're older, we've all been to war, we've all done it, seen it, and we're much more kind of helpful and appreciative and supportive. And I find when I'm watching shows now, I'll send the DP an email saying, "That is insanely good, that's phenomenal," and I think that's what starts to happen. You respect. I've got very much an open door policy, where I'll speak to DPs and tell them exactly what I've done. I'll give them all the lens information, all the testing we've done, and you just give out all your information. And I think everybody does that now, and it's much more. That's fine.
That's great. And you mentioned, just in passing, another key relationship, the gaffer.
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard to tell where the DP ends and the gaffer begins. How do you work with the gaffer? How do you, first of all, how do you choose
I think the gaffer is it's a huge and important relationship between two of us, because we are stuck with each other. Basically, once you start filming, it's yourself and the gaffer. So in the UK, it's the gaffer. In the States, there's a key grip as well, but that's almost like another Zoom call, because it's a slightly different system. So there's a key grip and a gaffer. But if we talk the UK system, he is realizing everything that you need. So when you're requesting a softbox, that say is a moonlight over, say, a school playground or something. You know, you might say, I need X, Y, and Z. And he said, look, I can make it cheaper by changing these lights. And you'll say, brilliant, that's fantastic. Because what you're trying to do is maximize your budget to have as many lights as you can, and also stay within your budget of the program. And the gaffers can solve problems, can save you money. And it's a hugely important relationship. And I think that's one thing we should talk about, is choosing your crew. So when you're a DP, you're choosing your cameramen, you're choosing your grips, you're choosing your gaffers. And that's hugely important to get the team right, because you're going to be together for a year, and you're going to have to all get on. And I find it fantastic having the right people. And I love choosing, when you come to a new city, finding the right people who are going to work.
And when you look at that team, do you look at who can do the best job for you now, or do you also look at their potential to grow, and how do you help people within the teams grow?
Yeah, I think that's something important. I definitely look long term, and when I'm doing a long term job, I always say to my camera crew, if anybody wants to step up, this is the job to do it. If, you know, like an Altered Carbon was a good example, you know, that was like, we were shooting for like 10 months, and you can step people up within the safety of the family. So any second ACs that want to become focus pullers, they can do it on a splinter unit. They can do it on a second unit, or a focus puller that wants to become a camera operator. The second unit, splinter unit, is a brilliant unit for people to step up and become, you know, to do their job with the crew watching, and then they can then go on to do the job in individual projects.
It sounds like you're really proactive in terms of developing people. If people are sitting within a crew as a second AC and thinking, I'd love to try more, what would be the best way to approach you to say, you know, help me learn more?
I think at the very beginning, I would love to try and how do I become a focus puller? You know, and sometimes I can see, sometimes that you see a seasoned crew person who's been doing it for a long time, who's in a position, and I'll go up to them and say, you should be focus pulling, you should be operating. And I can see that maybe they're a nice secure place. Yeah. And I'll kind of keep nagging them. Okay, you know what I mean? And I'll kind of push them. And there's a few people that I've pushed and said, you've got to do it, because I think you can get stuck in any industry. You can get stuck in your job, and you think, I don't want to take the risk, I'm not good enough. And you know, sometimes you just need a little kind of kick.
Yeah, but for people kind of wanting to move up, you think you wouldn't be offended anyway if somebody went?
No, I think speak to DPs. I think people want to know that you've got ambition. And the one thing I think in the freelance world is people want to help you when you freelance. You know, I think that when I was going freelance, you know, a lot of people would hire me because they wanted to give you a job, you know, very early on. And it was fantastic. And I got a huge amount of encouragement. And I would do the same for anybody who wants to step up. As long as they can do their job and they're good, then, you know, I would always try and help them. And because there's loyalty within the crew, you're like a family, I would always try and bring them back for other jobs. You know, and like an Altered Carbon, we had our A focus puller was a man, Kieran Humphreys, who'd been doing it for like 25 years, one of the best focus pullers in Vancouver. And he stepped up to camera operator. And he is a phenomenal camera operator. Yeah. And now I'm working with him in Toronto on Umbrella Academy.
Brilliant. It's great when you can see the potential in somebody and then give them that chance to fly.
Yeah.
And be selfless about it, because often giving somebody promotion means you're not going to get to work with them again for a while.
Yeah, no, and that definitely does happen.
But I think it's important for the wider industry to keep helping, you know, freelancers. We need to help each other.
Yeah.
I think something else that we've touched on, but it'd be good to talk about is the way that technology in this industry, and we talked a lot about the people side, but the technology industry is constantly evolving. How do you deal with the fact that, you know, cameras are changing all the time? The relationship between what we can do on a shoot and what we can do in post-production is constantly evolving. How do you keep up?
Yeah, it's hard. It's like, I always say, it's like learning a language, a new language every few years. You're just constantly learning. And especially, as you say, with the new technology, with the role of DITs becoming bigger, the kind of the world of color science and LUTs and looks, that's becoming a huge part of your day-to-day kind of working that didn't used to be. You know, when you're working on film, it was just one film stock or different temperatures or whatever. Now you're working with a million variables again. And it's fantastic. You can do anything and everything. And remote grading as well. Before, you'd have to go to the edit suite and grade. Now I can be in Glasgow and I can remote grade stuff in LA, London, or wherever. You can be anywhere in any city and speak to another city. And that's changed our industry enormously.
Does that allow you to keep more attachment to a show that you...
Yeah, I think you've got more creative attachment, whereas before you would have to let go of it and give it to or trust the colorists. Again, you would have a relationship with, you know, there's colorists I have, you know, a fantastic relationship. I know we're going to they know my work and they know they're going to do a great job.
Yeah. And do you find now, because you know that process more, that you'll stand on set and go, that window's too hot or that shadow's in the wrong place, but I don't need to worry about it now. I can fix it in post. Yeah,
no, definitely. And I sit with gaffers and grips and sort of I'll make a mental decision. It's going to take me 15 minutes to flag off that bit of light on the left-hand side. I can click a button in the grade and it's solved in 10 seconds. And, you know,
how do you make sure that's communicated to the grade?
I sometimes I put notes on with the DIT who will attach that to the metadata, which carries on down the line. And I always say what I try and do as well is bring my gaffer and grips into the grades, show them. And I've done it a couple of times, brought a gaffer in, because then they realise what can be fixed. Because sometimes they're like, "Are you sure? You crazy?"
Yeah. No, I've definitely had that conversation a couple of times where people have gone, you know, we've lost the light, or you know, that's going to take too long, and you go, no, trust me, this will work.
Yeah, you know,
you and the DP going, it's fine, and the director's going, I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I think that's once people sit in a grade and realise what you can do in that world, then it saves a lot of time on set.
No, definitely. If you know. If people are, you know, we're coming to you going, I suppose what I'm kind of boiling down is what would be the one piece of advice, the best piece of advice that either you've been given or that you would give to people entering the camera department and wanting to work their way through to being a cinematographer? What would be your pearl of wisdom?
Yeah, my pearl of wisdom is don't do what the committee says. Do what you want to do. And then go and speak to the committee. It's like, if you try and second guess creatively what people want, you'll always get it wrong. I think the way you see the world is the way your style comes across on camera. And that's unique. And that's why you're being hired. And I think I would hold on to that. And sometimes you won't get hired, but the people who like that style, and that's the way you see the world as a default, is stick to that. Because I think if you become a second guess sort of jobbing DP that thinks this is what people want to see, you're not going to make something that you're going to really love and be proud of.
I think that's brilliant advice. I mean, as a producer hiring a DP, I always try to figure out what that person's style and instinct is, because I want to know when it's all going wrong at 3 a.m. in the rain in a muddy field somewhere, they're going to make the right choices out of instinct. As opposed to, as you say, sitting there going, "Oh, what will everybody want?"
Yeah, and then, you know, I think it's going back to yourself. Is the relationship with production is hugely important. I think it's being able to communicate with production and collaborate and realize there's only a limited amount of money, no matter what the project is. If you're on a low budget, you know, kind of indie film, you make it within that chunk of money. If you're on a bigger budget, you still have to make it within that chunk of money. Yeah, and you're always going to have restrictions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great way to look at it.
You know, I do a lot of bartering. You know, it's like, can I sell the crane money to gain a drone or something? Yeah. You know, and I think you have those conversations.
Yeah. Do you find it's useful to have a sense of what things are worth rather than just going, production can deal with that. So you can absolutely have those conversations where I'll trade you a Steadicam day for a crane.
I think you just need to have an understanding of the cost of everything and the implications of if you choose a warehouse to film in and it's got 4 windows at 100 feet up, you're going to need 4 massive 135-foot cranes with huge amounts of lights. It's going to cost a fortune. So maybe you want to choose something that is more accessible for lighting. So a lot of those decisions get made. I think sometimes you can get carried away and you've got a scale of a project you want to complete, but you think you've got to know what's going to cost. And when the gaffer starts to go white and kind of glaze over, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and I think the mantra always, certainly from my point of view, is can we get the money on screen rather than kind of access and things. But I suppose that sums up the whole thing, is that it's always art against the cost, and it's making sure we get that money on the screen.
Yeah, no, it really is, and it's a great point actually. Is of it's just that little that little bit of the sensor. You've got to get it all on there, and sometimes you can get carried away with yourself, and you've got too many crew, and it's got too big, and it's not coming across. And I think it's knowing when the animal's tamed, and it's working.
Yeah, that's a really nice note to kind of bring us to a conclusion. I think it'd be great to hear some of the questions that have been fired into us.
Yeah, I've had some great questions in, so let's absolutely open up to those. So one question is, can you give an example of where, not necessarily yourself, but you feel that mistakes may have been made by a DOP that disturbed the audience attention, so it's kind of pulled the audience out from the story?
There's definitely, I've watched dramas where I've thought, I'm now watching the camera move, and I think that's why I always kind of, if I'm watching the camera move and I'm not watching the story anymore, then they've lost me. And I think that's the important thing. The camera move has to be part of the story and almost be hidden. Yeah. It's a bit like working with VFX as well. Sometimes when the VFX is too much, you suddenly pop out the whole story and you're like, whoa, what's going on? And then you want to hide the VFX within the whole thing. And I think that's the camera has to do exactly the same.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that, and particularly where VFX come in, is people tend to linger on VFX shots or do crazy camera moves through them just because they can.
Yes.
Whereas actually, again, you want to believe that the camera can do that and see that. And one of the things we used to do on Doctor Who was that we had a rule that we would try to cut VFX as if they hadn't cost anything. So a wide shot that you would do of the street would last 2 seconds and would be framed for the actors, whereas often a VFX shot would be framed for the matte painting and linger for longer. And actually, it should have been about what the camera would normally do, as opposed to thinking about, oh, here's something fancy we can show you.
This cost a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So another question is from somebody who is a camera trainee, and they're asking that during this time of lockdown, is there anything that they could be looking at, any kind of training or anything that they want to be kind of genning up on that might help them prepare for their future career?
I think they take as many photographs as they can. I think this is a great moment to go off and do your own projects and to do a study of your house or whatever, I think just go and take photographs and build up a portfolio, because it's your portfolio that's going to blow people away. As a camera trainee, I think when people show me their work and say this is the kind of photography I take, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That's gonna get you places. Do you know what I mean? And I think looking at work, looking at the work of DPs you admire, looking at the work of directors you admire, is all going to sort of feed the system, feed your subconscious, and just immerse yourself with imagery.
Great, thank you. And then another question is, how might somebody shooting in docs or currently in current affairs consider making that transition into drama? How would they go about it?
I think the best thing then to do is what I did, is start having a relationship with the people who are making the short films. So find out who's, there's loads of schemes in Scotland, Wales, England, of all the short films. I'm sure something we can find through Skillset. find out who these directors are, contact them, say, I'd love to shoot your next short film. And you do it free. And that's because there's no money at that end of the market. And you're essentially doing it as your showroom. So and if you can't find anybody in that market, speak to young students in the film schools and offer to shoot their graduation films or whatever. Just come up with the next generation of filmmakers.
Great. And this is a question that might be quite tricky to answer, but somebody said, Neville, you sound like a great person to work for. Do you find all DOPs are as supportive as you in your experience?
Yeah, no, I think, yes. I think the one thing that always amazes me is when I start to meet other DPs, they're kind of like, we're all kind of the same, because it takes a certain type of person to be able to run departments, to be able to be visually creative. And I think we kind of slightly mirror each other. So I always laugh when I meet other DPs. I'm like, oh my God, you remind me of myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you describe how you research and realise the look of a film during pre-production? Do you have a method for that?
Yeah, I will put together like a lookbook, and I've got a lot of references that I've been picking up over the years of just images that kind of I go, wow, I know that's good. I'll spend a lot of time using colour palette references of photographs of this is what I want the palette to be, and I'll use them on set. I'll show them to the gaffer, the DIT, and say, this is my reference for this scene. And I find that hugely important and just really quick to get to somewhere, rather than just saying, no, that's it. No, tweak this, tweak that. It's like, this is my reference. This is what we're going for. And I think build up an image library and just keep grabbing images from all over the place, and just have a folder in your computer or Dropbox and just keep chucking them in. And even if you don't know why that photo is going to be useful, just throw it in, because it stimulated something in your brain, and it's going to be handy down the line.
Great. And do you have an episode or a series of something that you've worked on that you feel most proud of? What do you feel that you brought to that show? I
think Umbrella Academy season 1 I was so proud of, because Steve Blackman, the showrunner, and I'd worked on Alter Carbon together, and Alter Carbon, was phenomenal as well. But we come from the world of Alter Carbon, and he said, I want to make a kind of Wes Anderson, Fargo world, and we basically made it from the beginning, and it was like our baby, and I was so pleased with how it all turned out, because it really was something I'd made from the very beginning, with the production designer, with all the departments, and I think the way I saw it in my head, it was the way it appeared on the screen, and that doesn't always happen.
What should the average time do you feel that you're given for prep for a show, and do you have to fight to get that time, or is it quite standard?
It's purely budget dependent. You're used when you start off, you get 2 weeks, and you can work within 2 weeks. It just obviously that puts more of the director's vision, in place, because the director's chosen the location, the director's made all those choices, and you're left with making everything work within those choices, and that still works. But when you're given 4 months world building, then you can really create something special. And I think, you can definitely still world build, if you were doing a feature in 6 weeks, you would just throw yourself straight into it.
Great. How does remote grade work? And also, do you go into a suite to oversee that work for real at some point?
Yeah, so remote grades work where I'll go into a post's facility in London or Glasgow, and I'll get a monitor that's exactly the same as the monitor in LA, and they'll feed me the pictures from LA, and we'll both see the images exactly the same time on exactly the same monitors, lined up exactly. So what we're seeing is exactly the same image. So then we can start to grade, and then we're just speaking on a conference call, and we'll just go through as if I'm sitting in the room. And that's phenomenal, because that technology is now, as the internet's got faster, we can now send huge files across the internet that you can never do, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When starting out, how do you make and maintain contacts with the crew that you might want to work with in the future? Is there anything that you kind of mentally did or physically did to kind of keep those connections up?
No, I think it's chemistry. You know who you like, and you keep in touch. And I think I'll keep in touch with a lot of crew, and they'll keep in touch with you. I think they just become one of your mates almost. And I think because you spend so much time with them, you have that kind of the crossover of a colleague and a friend becomes a little bit the same, and I think that helps enormously.
Definitely. And did you learn anything from your historical work on docs that you feel that you've then been able to bring, for example, lighting or lenses, etc., that have kind of really aided your work in drama?
Yeah, I think the documentary work was hugely helpful in, as Marcus was saying, in problem solving. You just learn to problem solve every, whether it's lighting or whether it's you have to shoot a scene on one lens and you've got 10 minutes left. It's how do you do that? You don't just go, well, I just can't do this, and just sit down and go, this is useless. You can always find a solution. I think because in documentaries, you would sometimes the most amazing part of the documentary would happen in the last 10 minutes while somebody's telling their life story, and if you're not running because there's not enough light or you haven't got the right lens, you've lost it. The person's not going to tell some phenomenal epiphany of their life again just because the cameraman said it was too dark or whatever. So you learn technically how to always make the image work.
Right.
And to be able to push the cameras to the ISO, you would never stop. You would never sort of say, oh, we can't do this, unless it was hugely, hugely important light,
So I feel like that background of working on, lower budget, but also, as you say, in that kind of doc background has really, really benefited your career now. It must make you more hireable because people know that, you're mindful of the cost of the shot and of just, really making it work.
And I think also there's a great moment where I was working on lip service, and I remember going for the interview, and it was Brian Kaczynski had got me in for an interview, which is brilliant because I'd just done sort of short films, low budget dramas, and I wasn't really in the TV world. And this was a BBC 3 production, I think, and he got me into the room, and I was sitting with all the execs from London, and they were saying, so how would you do it? And I said, I think you have to make this feel like it's real. I think you've got to shoot it like a documentary. It's got to feel like you're in the room with them, because if you don't, it's going to feel like it's fake. It's going to feel like nobody's going to buy this world as real. And I remember thinking, I haven't got the job, I've ruined it. And I kind of walked out, and then I got the phone call and I got the job. And I think they just enjoyed maybe just a fresh approach and how to do it.
Great.
I was applying my documentary experience in how to shoot a drama, and they did that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Looking at some of the chat, obviously people are coming from those kinds of backgrounds, or maybe from short filmmaking, indie filmmaking. So it sounds like it's a real strength actually to have kind of had that background to apply then into drama or play feature.
And I think that's what I was saying earlier. Is I kind of that's what I do, and I wasn't trying to pretend I could make you the best high-end polished TV drama. You know what I mean? Because I knew I could make a documentary drama, but make it feel like drama. So I think always do what your heart wants to do.
It also gives you those little kind of extra benefits sometimes when things go wrong. I remember one night shoot with Neville where the cherry picker didn't turn up. And Neville's response, where some DPs would be just going, my lighting plan has melted down. Neville's response was, can you just move the action further up the street where there are street lights?
Impressive. So maybe 2 more questions. So I've got, what advice would you give a clapper loader trying to get into high-end TV from a film background?
I think get in touch with other crew that they admire, and I think it's look at the people that are doing the work you want to work on and get in touch with them.
I'd say it's also worth getting in touch with production officers, because there are always times when productions need dailies or somebody goes sick, And it's great if a production officer's got a database of crew members. So, you know, sometimes the DP, you know, obviously the DP will lead those choices, but sometimes if a DP can't find somebody, the production officer can go, here's a second day CV looks good, do you want to meet them? It's a kind of two-pronged approach to getting contacts.
Yeah, that's a good point. Find out who the production managers and the line producers are, and send them your CVs.
And then a final question, because I realise we're nearly at time. So what advice would you give a younger you that maybe you know, you would think, oh, if I'd known that then, you know, that would have really helped me, or has it all just been perfect?
No, I think I would have probably said jump earlier. You know, go into dramas earlier.
Yeah.
I think if I was looking back in my career, I really enjoyed the documentaries, and I was doing the odd drama. I think if I was to do it again, I wouldn't change much, but I would probably say do more drama. So if they say to anybody coming up who's working in current affairs or documentaries or corporates, try and do more and more drama. Just push yourself a little bit more, and you would get there quicker.
Great.
And you would meet more up and coming directors, and I think that was the great joy of meeting the new talent coming up, and you all kind of grow together.
Great. So I think we're at time. They've got a few more questions coming in, but unfortunately I don't think we're going to get to them, but hopefully we've given people a really good flavour, and obviously huge thank you to Neville and to Marcus for imparting their wisdom. I think we could have, you know, we could listen to you all day, so it's been absolutely fantastic to have you. So huge thank you for that.
No, an absolute pleasure. And anybody can get in touch via, you know, Instagram and things like that if they want to ask any more questions.